Hi, Kari. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's good to see you. We're here at Brand Innovators. We're talking about linear TV. Do you want to just give a quick intro to some people that may not know who you are that are joining us today?
Sure. So Kari Marshall, and I lead the media organization at T-Mobile. And that includes, a lot of the in-housing that we've been doing over the last few years with our programmatic and search and social teams. What's interesting about my team is, prior to COVID, we were 100% based in Bellevue here. And then after COVID, we happened to merge with Sprint. And on the onset now, I have half of my team here, and we are entirely virtual team. Even though we're kind of returning back to the office, we'll always be virtual.
All right, that's good to know. I miss going up to the office and seeing all the faces. So, in the post-COVID world, everything is being done on Zoom. So thank you again for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you for
So I'm
having me.
Susan Edmonds. Oh, sorry, I'm Susan Edmonds. I'm with LG Ads. I have to admit, this is really a moment that's coming full circle for me. Not only am I a T-Mobile customer, but I actually started my career out on the linear side as a broadcast buyer, and I was actually on the agency team that launched T-Mobile into the US market. So now I'm on the other side in sales, working in connected TV for LG Ads. And T-Mobile is actually one of our strategic partners. So if this is actually a really great moment for me, and thank you so much for joining us today. In regards to like linear and streaming, out of curiosity, are you watching anything right now in the streaming world? And is there anything that you have a secret guilty pleasure of?
Well, I think I'm probably not the only one, but we just wrapped up Squid Games, which was my obsession for a while. And then, our go-to at night when I want to check out, because I also have two little kids and, life is always a little bit crazy. My guilty pleasure is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is on repeat all the time, or just Impractical Jokers. It's nice to kind of end the night just with some comedy.
Definitely, and where you don't have to think about the storyline or the plot, or just have some great laughs and have it lighthearted. All
That's
right.
right.
That's awesome. That's a great lineup. I am a huge fan right now of Yellowstone. It premiered a couple
Mm.
weeks ago. Last night we caught up on the first three episodes. So we were really excited for it to premiere back again. All right, so let's jump into this. So in regards to, linear TV and, how does it look like for your CTV strategy when you're tying in linear? I know T-Mobile is a huge broadcast linear advertiser, and when you're looking at the CTV strategy, how do you tie it in and what's the vice versa of the comparison?
Yeah, I think that we've moved from thinking about CTV as its own thing, and really thinking about a holistic strategy that obviously starts with the consumer, and then it's about video, and video that's placed in some great content, and then backing out and figuring out, depending on the audience that you want to reach, what is the right mix and investment across linear, across CTV, and that kind of comes afterwards versus a starting point.
Okay. I know from an LG perspective, we're really looking at the household. So it sounds like that's what you're moving to, more of an audience first approach, and making sure you're hitting the audience regardless of if they're on linear or CTV.
That's right. And that's our goal, at least, right? The way that we plan doesn't always mean that that's the way that we can buy, or the way that we can measure. And so trying to connect all of those kind of worlds and teams has been, difficult with the fragmentation that we see, and how, the consumer only sees the content and the ads that they're served, but we know behind the scenes, trying to plan to reach that one person is filled with complexities.
Yeah, I mean, as the consumers watching, they don't realize if they're watching CTV, a linear spot, they just know it's on the glass and the large screen in front of them. And we're serving messages to them, regardless if it's CTV, OTT, or linear. All
Right.
right.
Yeah. We used to get, a few years ago, if I had, anyone here at T-Mobile ask me about, why a spot was run in a particular program, or did I see something? And I used to be able to get, pretty quick and direct answers. And now I have to pause and ask, where were you watching it? What platform did you watch it on? At what time? Like all these additional clarifying questions just to try to navigate what potential ads they saw.
Definitely. And when you're looking at the platform, it could even go further into, were you actually on a gaming platform, then watching through the connected
That's
device?
right.
It's very a complex area now. And I know that from an OEM perspective, our other competitors or other OEMs like a Samsung or Vizio are really trying to make it holistic and easier for brands to get into the market and reach it at a household level. With regards to, best practices and looking at when you guys are actually considering linear versus CTV, do you guys have a philosophy of like, how much is too much? Are you preferencing CTV over linear these days? With the upfront, we know it was a very challenging environment this year with, triple increases.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole host of things that go into answering that question. Like you said, there's a cost analysis. There's an inventory analysis. There is, how scalable. We're still a business that needs scale, and incremental reach is still valuable. And then, most important is, where's the consumer and how has consumer behavior changed over time? And then taking some risks and gambles of like, what do we project consumer behavior will be? Because obviously the upfronts isn't about next month or next quarter. We're trying to predict what it's going to be in the next 4 quarters. And so there's so many different data points that we leverage. We're still using some historical, mixed modeling. We look at predictions and getting our data and information from a whole bunch of sources. And that's kind of the fun part, is the creativity to kind of marry all the data to come up with your recommendation on how much CTV do you think you need and how much is too much. And then you have to place some bets at the end of the day.
What's one of the biggest bets that you're placing that consumers are going to go on in the next four quarters or a year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still so much learning to be had in this space, right? There's measurement opportunities. There's probably consolidation in the future, or I hope that there's some consolidation in the future. And there's different partnerships that I think are just critical to form, like in the ad tech space, as you're thinking about, how do I manage frequency when I have buys across, hundreds of different publishers? Like, managing frequency is a real issue because the consumer is experiencing our ads in a way that maybe is not so friendly, and maybe they're seeing our ad 5 times in a row. Our ability to execute flawlessly is at risk because of the fragmentation. So I think making sure that we're having the right conversations now of who to partner with in the ad tech space, both on how do we manage frequency, how do we measure better. And then obviously, and I think that we'll get to it a little bit, is, brand safety and fraud. And so those are the conversations that are critical just to get a good foundation. And then as you're thinking about how much you invest in, the CTV space across, various partners, you have a grounding to understand what's working or not.
Okay. In regards to managing frequency, back when I was a broadcast buyer, it was all about how many times you showed up in a program. From a T-Mobile perspective, what is your strategy to manage frequency, and how are you doing that from an ad tech perspective?
Yeah, we do it from an ad tech perspective. I think also I'm supporting a lot of different lines of businesses and going after various audiences. And that one consumer at the end of the day could actually fit within 3 or 4 different buckets of audiences. And so it's not just managing frequency within one campaign or within kind of one line of business. It's thinking about, from a household perspective, how to start building the right experience for that one household or that one individual as much as we know about them. And so, but it's difficult. And, we have partners like the Trade Desk that I think are, helping us evaluate the space and doing frequency management, but there's only so much inventory going through the platform still, right? So you kind of do what you can with the ad tech partners that you have, but hopefully those will be more scalable in the future.
Okay. And then from measuring it, do you guys have your own T-Mobile modeling system for measuring reach and frequency across linear and CTV campaigns?
Yeah, we do look at that, and our media partner initiative is definitely helping us do that with their tools, and we have some internal tools of looking at measurement, but it's still, I would say, it's still a nascent environment. Like there's still, every partner that we go to has different nuances that you kind of have to accommodate to. And so that's where I think about more standardization to help us, because I can partner with one and get it great, but if it only represents a small portion of the ecosystem, it doesn't really help me manage frequency. It just helps manage frequency within a platform.
Yes.
But it's not helping me manage it to the consumers that I'm trying to reach.
Definitely. When it comes to like standardization and trying to bridge the gap, do you see anyone doing it or leading the way, maybe outside of T-Mobile, that is trying to do it, or is it still up in the air because it's such a new area or environment to go into?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's really new. If there's people out there that feel like they're, have figured it out, I would love to talk to them. I think it's also a bit more challenging for, marketers that are still trying to get scale and are still mass in nature, right? I'm not just trying to target, 10 million people or, 50 million people. I'm trying to target everyone in the US at some point in time. Like everyone is a potential customer for T-Mobile. And we already have 100 million customers of our own. And so scale is so critical for us. The opportunity of CTV and where our industry is going is kind of opposite of where and how we have won in the past. We have won by, basically buying in bulk, really efficient, leveraging spend, and going big. Now the opportunity has changed, and we need to figure out how to manipulate the marketplace in a new way. The brands and marketers that I think maybe have, I don't want to say easier time, but maybe it's less complex, is they have a very specific target to go after. They are maybe in the e-commerce space, like we are not. And have data signals to understand how those audiences are, how they're tying back to whatever their business outcome might be. And so I think that there's certain marketers that can navigate the space maybe a little bit easier than an advertiser that has been, a leader in investing in video for a long time. When you have that much volume, it's harder to manage frequency. It's harder to manage consumer journeys because it is so massive.
Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned earlier, multiple targets, we became a T-Mobile household because of the benefits and the services that you guys offered. And your audiences can fall into multiple buckets, and you guys are a large mass advertiser. When you're looking at extending, into incremental reach, how are you guys managing it? And is that, I'm assuming it's a key component to all your, activation campaigns, is getting that incrementality.
Yep, absolutely. And there is not a consumer out there that we don't want to reach. It's just making sure that we have the right message in front of them, or the right offer, or the right storytelling, the narrative. And so we use a lot of different partners. We have iSpot as a partner that helps us on the back end understand how our buy is, and the households and that we're reaching. We are doing more auditing to say, like, well, this is what we thought we would go buy, and this was our plan. How did it deliver? So again, it's marrying ad tech from a deployment standpoint of like how you're navigating and accessing the inventory, and then the back end, it's some measurement and auditing capabilities that you have to look at to see, this was my plan, this is how I bought. Did that actually happen? And if not, it's constantly kind of course correct and learning to get better. But we do look at incremental reach. It is important to us. And we have found that our strategy in the video space has had to evolve because it's queuing reach really fast over a weekend is very difficult to do today. And you can go big and spend a lot of money, but usually that means a lot of frequency on a smaller audience if you're not careful with how you're planning, but more importantly, how you're actually buying.
Okay, yeah, definitely. When reaching that audience and those consumers, as a mass advertiser across linear and CTV with T-Mobile, how important is tying in cross-screen from your CTV buys to those second screens where consumers are always on multiple devices while they're watching the large screen?
Yeah, I think that goes to the narrative that we're trying to say, and knowing that not every environment is, you're not able to communicate the same story within every environment. And it's trying to navigate, if we have, on the big screen, there's sight, sound, motion. We know that consumers are not 100%, attentive to whatever they're watching on the big screen. And they often have, one or two different devices also in front of them. So it's trying to make those connections. It's really thinking, again, going back to the audience of what they might be doing at what time of day or what day of week, to make sure that the storytelling is coinciding with the behaviors that consumers have evolved to. And obviously the impact of the past year and a half, behaviors have changed substantially, right? And I would argue that the multiple screens at the same time has increased even more. That people are doing a lot of things in their home besides just watching TV, whether that's CTV or linear.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my perspective, our habits have changed in our household. Beforehand, we were always on our mobile devices or iPads. In the past year, our TV has really become the main focal point and is the homepage of our household, because we're now spending more time watching the bigger screen or streaming different shows, or actually getting the instant movie that should be out in the theaters, but now we can watch it on our household. Whereas if you told me a year ago that we'd be watching more time on our TV, I would have said you were crazy, because that's not how our habits are. But it's great to see that the big screen is kind of coming back and really making an impact for consumers, and they have multiple choices to watch their content from. One of the things you mentioned earlier, not just with reach and frequency, was really addressing fraud. And like, how does T-Mobile look at fraud in the CTV space, and what type of safeguards are you implementing to combat fraud?
Yeah, I think implementing the safeguards is, I would say, still fairly new territory. How we have safeguarded ourselves today has been more about ensuring where the inventory is coming from, right? And that goes back to partnerships and direct partnerships to align on the content and the programming that you're going to be in. And then, we're working close with the IAS as they're rolling out more capabilities in the space. But again, still new, and we need to test into it. And then, there's always looking at different exclusion lists or inclusion lists. Again, managing content further upfront versus kind of letting it go wild, because that's where I think a lot more risk for fraud happens.
Okay, definitely. I mean, I know from an OEM perspective, like our company LG, we really believe that first party data is the key to preventing fraud. So we understand what's actually coming across on the screen. And so it's built into the screen, and our ACR data validates that. So it's not just a singular to LG, but it's across all the OEMs that are using their first party ACR data. That's really helping us combat fraud in the CTV space. In regards to, measurement and network guarantees around, demographic reach, what triggers and measurement techniques would you love to see in the connected TV, or vice versa in the linear, be adopted to linear? Would you like to see, different, type of guarantees from a demographic perspective come into CTV? Or, going back to linear, should we move everything to like a P2 plus delivery for guarantees on GRPs?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And there's a lot of work in our industry to kind of all get on the same page, because what I want is not necessarily what another brand wants, and every publisher and every partner also wants something different. So therefore, we lack standardization and we don't move forward. And I think in order for us to get better, there has to be some gives and takes, and it might not be perfect for everyone, but we have to align on better standardization. We have to eliminate the fragmentation that we have today in order for us to have better measurement solutions. I can't have measurement solutions that are different depending on how I invest. Again, going back to, I want to understand the audience that I'm reaching and did it work or not, and to have different methodologies across different platforms is not helping me understand the investment.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to have a generalized methodology from linear into CTV as an industry to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples across the board and not just apples and oranges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, you know, and this is an area that needs to advance is the measurement front, and having more automation around how do I optimize? Because it's one thing to say, you know, maybe I go to P2 plus, and then on the back end, I need to, you know, ensure that I'm able to optimize my buys against the outcomes that I'm seeing. Well, I don't always know if the inventory is going to be available for me to actually replicate what worked in the marketplace. And so it's a whole ecosystem that needs to evolve kind of in parallel path with the measurement. But you could have, even if you had the right measurement, if you don't have the ability to optimize your buy because the inventory isn't there and available for you to go and optimize into or out of, that limits your capabilities to kind of marry the two worlds together.
Okay, great. You know, and looking ahead into 2022, and I know you're always thinking a couple quarters in advance, you know, what excites you about going into next year? And can you share how you're going to be approaching the 2022 upfronts?
Oh, great question. And to think about 22 upfronts is a little bit early for us. But I would say, you know, the past couple of years have obviously been just a little bit chaotic. And we went through, you know, 2020 with the merger happening at the same time with Sprint. And so it's just been, it's been a little bit crazy, and consumer behavior drastically started to change. Like, it was always heading this way, right? That the trends were always saying like cord cutters and streaming services was going to be important. Like, we all knew that was coming. And then, you know, the past year and a half when everyone was at home, it just like, you know, it enhanced that even more. And it really put consumer behavior at the forefront of understanding how do we start manipulating our strategies differently to reach this audience. Now we're starting to see, you know, different types of trends as, you know, people are going back in the world. I went to the movie theaters for the first time last week. And as we start to learn and think about this new consumer behavior, again, projecting what it's going to be like into, you know, next year, the end of next year, is a challenge. I'm excited though, because I do think that it opens up so many different opportunities, and the sophistication in this space, a lot of people call it like extremely complex, and it is. To try to navigate and tell, you know, my leaders here in like 30 minutes what's going on is like impossible. But it's exciting. And I think that that's why, you know, I've liked the media space so much, is it's constantly evolving. You know, this wasn't even a conversation that we had at this scale and at this level a couple of years ago. And so to try to, you know, look at consumer behavior of what it's been, anticipate where it's going, is a great challenge. And I love trying to navigate that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can agree wholeheartedly, coming from a video background, that, you know, up until COVID really changed how people were consuming their media. It was always the year of mobile, right? And now it really has become the year of CTV, getting those cord cutters. People are really moving, not just from watching, you know, linear, but they are, you know, watching on their large screen, getting it from OTT, getting it from CTV. So, you know, the consumption habits have really changed, and it's been really exciting to see as marketers and advertisers adopt different avenues to actually reach their consumers, because it is a bit of a fragmented environment. In regards to like reaching consumers, I know one of the core pillars at T-Mobile is diversity, equality, and inclusion. Having worked with you guys in the past, I know it's really important internally and externally. Can you share how this might impact, your culture, your consumer base, marketing efforts around advanced TV?
Yeah, I would say, not, taking maybe a step back and not just advanced TV, but because you to unpack what you said is quite a lot,
Why?
right? There's this, past year plus has been a lot of conversations about people, right? And that continues. And I think that as a leader, I've never, and maybe I should have, but the amount of time our organization talks about our people has been amazing and a big change. And I think it's great. And I think that the conversations and awareness of the right kind of dialogue is necessary. And you think about diversity and you think about, maybe your head was thinking about what diversity meant in the past, but it's so much more. And we think about even on the supply side of minority owned publishers and understanding and the reflection of why maybe they haven't been part of our conversations, and really partnering with making sure that we have the right media process for evaluating the publishers. Our system was broken, and awareness to that has been very kind of insightful to understand of, it was nothing intentfully that we were doing, but you just get moving so fast. You're not taking a step back and looking at your process, your decision making, and how you're going to market. And so, and also, like I said, so there's, diversity in supply. We look at, people in our team, and, again, half of my team isn't in Bellevue. We have people in our Reston office and in Kansas and in Texas and in California. Like, my team is spread everywhere. And I think that diversity of thought and diversity of kind of the talent that we're getting is also just critically important, which enhances our culture. And our culture will never be, what it was when we were just T-Mobile. But we're a new company also. Like, we merged with Sprint. We're a new company. Our culture has evolved tremendously. And it's exciting to see what we can get done now.
Fantastic. I like it. I think that with COVID, it's been being able to tap into people around the United States to be part of a team versus always in one general area has really given, marketers, companies really a diverse set of talent, and tapping into the best talent, regardless if, they're in the state or the city or they're actually across country. So I think I applaud you guys for having a diverse team and being able to manage all those, the pieces of the puzzle together. I think we're going to wrap it up. We do have some questions coming in. One of the questions I have is, with so much focus on streaming TV today, how do you see that evolving going forward? Do you foresee any more in advanced TV?
Yeah, I think, and you kind of mentioned it earlier on, you never thought like the big screen would be kind of your source of entertainment that was always on. And I think that was true for a lot of households. But now as we evolve into kind of going back to work and traveling, and, I have to make a plug, because, what is going to change even further is now marrying like the year of the mobile with the year of advanced TV, because you can do it on the road, right? T-Mobile, if anyone missed the news yesterday, we announced that our ultra capacity, our 5G network, is nationwide, covering over 200 million people. Like, that is massive. Our competitors are still in pockets and arenas and little parks. Like, we have the scale now. And with 5G, you can take all that content on the road with you. Like, I'm heading on a road trip over Thanksgiving. I literally use my phone to power my kids' iPads. They're streaming all the way down the coast. Like, the amount of TV and the volume of videos that are being consumed on our network are just going to explode with 5G. And now that we have the nationwide coverage, I think consumers are actually going to realize, like, they don't have to connect to Wi-Fi to stream when they're in a hotel. Like, they can just use their phone because it's 5G. It's fast. It's as fast as Wi-Fi. And now we're over 200 million pops. that will change consumer behavior.
Yeah, I mean, not to, keep touting T-Mobile, but being a customer, I just got the new iPhone. So I am on the 5G network. I have noticed in the past week since I've owned the phone, how much faster the service is. I too am about to go on a break in the next 2 days and take off for the weekend. And I've actually already downloaded some of the shows that I have been wanting to watch for the past 2 weeks. And I just was impressed how quickly it would have taken to download. Whereas I knew, and the reason why I pre-did it was I would have taken a whole 3 or 4 hours to get these, all this content onto my phone to download to make sure I had it. I was like, let's do it now while I'm thinking about it versus an hour before I leave for the plane. And I just was like amazed at how quickly it didn't take an hour. It was like minutes. Yeah. So it was pretty amazing. In regards to like the CTV space, I have one question coming in. What are you looking at from a KPI perspective, and how are you evaluating those CTV campaigns?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because there's, a lot of different KPIs and us as a brand, our business isn't in the digital space yet. We're still brick and mortar, like our transactions happen in our retail stores. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at the impact that our investments are making, we have some shorter term indicators that are, we leverage iSpot. We look at actions taken on our website that are correlated to transactions that happen in our store. So that is kind of like the primary KPI that we're looking at. But we also look at kind of historical modeling, which is more macro, right? And very historical to start to see how different channels are impacting, contributing to our business. And I will say, for anyone that's still using mixed modeling, and we do, it's a great data point, even though it is historical. It's interesting to see how the model catches up over time. Before, it's always a look back. And even though the model was saying like, don't invest in CTV in advance, we're like, well, of course we would. Like consumer behavior is there. There's inventory there. The cost makes sense. And now our model got refreshed. And it's like, oh, you should go spend money here. We're like, yes, we should. So it's more of a verification of our strategy and a verification of kind of the kind of risk that we're willing to take of like, hey, we're going to follow consumer behavior. It's the right thing to do. And then it's like later validated by a very sophisticated model.
Yeah, that's impressive that, that you're leading the modeling based, or like you're leading the decision making from your gut based on what how consumers are consuming, and then the modeling comes back in and says you guys made the right decision. So I mean, it's we always want to have checks and balances, but I love the fact that you guys are taking those chances and saying, all right, the modeling may not say it right now because it doesn't have the right data, but our gut says this because we're seeing how consumers are actually, taking in the content, and we're going to lead with this as a first approach. So, and then you have the modeling, bridging the gap at the end. When it comes to, I've got a question from the crowd. When it comes to how does CTV work for your upper funnel and lower funnel tactics?
Yeah, it's both. And I think about it the same way as, we've already thought about linear TV. Linear TV played the role of upper funnel and lower funnel. It's all about just reaching the right audience. And, we leverage TV because it's a vehicle to get, mass reach, and as a mass brand, like that's what we need. I think that, CTV provides different opportunities to obviously segment and be more strategic about who you're talking to with what message. But I think it has the opportunity to play at all stages of the funnel, and we do use it for all stages of the funnel. What might change is the content that we're in, the flighting strategy that we deploy, the pressure that we think is required, and the measurement in the back end. But I think it has the opportunity to play at all parts of the funnel.
Okay. And then speaking of measurement on the back end, how do you manage working with multiple streamers when we know that there's duplication that exists?
Yes,
I'm hitting you with all the tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like I said, we use, partners like the Trade Desk to help us kind of consolidate our view. But it's still, it's lacking the holistic picture. There's still opportunity to funnel more inventory through the platform to manage that. But it's still an area that we're testing and learning in. And there's only so much I think that we can do on the brand side. I think until our industry has more consolidation on the publisher side and on the platform side and OEM side, like more standardization is going to allow us to get better at understanding our investments.
Definitely. I know from an OEM perspective, this is what's really important to us, is making sure that we can actually drive incremental reach and not have the duplication. So from every OEM, they have their own first party ACR. So we're actually able to see what comes on the glass and see, if the user's already been exposed to your message, to limit the duplication and get that incrementality and drive new viewership on a mass reach perspective. I think there's some more questions coming in. We got a lot of questions this round. Does your OEM strategy, does your OEM strategy include leveraging ACR data to suppress certain audiences to help minimize duplication? I'm not writing these. These are anonymous.
So, I mean, as you know, and feel free to jump in. I mean, ACR technology is extremely beneficial to understand that overlap. I think that it's still difficult to measure the overlap across all devices in the household, because one OEM doesn't mean that they're the only OEM in that household, right? And so there's still, like I said, there's still pockets of opportunity to understand at the OEM level how to measure incrementality, and that's very beneficial. But it doesn't necessarily mean that household has been got incremental reach to that household.
Definitely. That is true. I will say, being an OEM, we know that there's multiple TVs in the household, but one of the things that we have seen is the majority of time spent is going to be usually on the largest screen. So typically households are either an LG, Samsung, Vizio, or some of the other partners. And I know that we're all trying to do the best that we can to make sure that we're leveraging our ACR data. But we all have our own type of connectivity to reach the extended audience within the household. So that's one of the things I know that the IAB is looking to standardize as well. One of the questions I'm getting is, how are you approaching audiences when buying linear and CTV? I know that you're a mass, you guys are buying in bulk. It's, mass audience approach. You still have 200 million people in the US that you can drive over to T-Mobile to be subscribers. So how do you approach it, especially when you have multiple targets and multiple business lines? Sorry, very complex question.
Well, welcome to my world. Yeah, and we have an audience-based strategy. We also have a content strategy, and we can't forget that content is still extremely valuable to think about. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have the right content to reach your audiences, and that's why we always start with audiences. But it's also important to understand, which I'm excited about. I think that there's going to probably be amazing content that's been in the pipeline and in the making that's going to be released to get those eyeballs against. But it's a balance, right? And as we look at managing the overall strategy of reaching our audiences and how that changes maybe even over the course of time based on seasonality, prioritization of what our business, we balance kind of the mass reach, and we use audience data in a variety of ways, right? It might not be for informing every single investment in the video space, but as we lean into sponsorships, or where do we want to double down? Where do we want to have greater share of voice? How do we want to partner? That's where, insights of your audience are extremely valuable when you understand what is the passion points of those people that you're trying to reach. That it's not just a spot buy. But I will say in the linear space, it's still a little bit, even though your insights might be against a particular audience, the transactional side is still a demo based buy. You're still reaching everyone, right? And so there's, the impact that your audience strategy can have in the linear space is just not as sophisticated. The impact that your audience strategy can have in the advanced TV space is very sophisticated. And so I think that's where, because there is so much opportunity, there is a lot more discussion needed of how does your audience-based strategy in this advanced TV world, how is it performing? And that's when you go back to what ad tech are you using? What measurement capabilities do you have? Is there better consolidation and less fragmentation that can happen in the marketplace, so we can actually take advantage of this world that I think is extremely powerful and has a huge opportunity to be the investment that's going to contribute the most to our business. It will scale, but as it scales, the sophistication needs to come along, and all of those things that we talked in the past half hour have to happen, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that we have ability to minimize fraud, and there's brand safety. All those things that maybe the digital space is more advanced in, we need to carry that through into the advanced TV space.
Okay, and then I have one last question before we wrap it up. When you're viewing reach extension from a linear and CTV buy, are you looking to reinforce messaging throughout the customer journey? And if you are, is it both, or are you making a distinction, from linear to CTV, vice versa?
It's both. On our postpaid business, which is the mass, it's about reach extension, right? We're going after everyone. As we talk about our network and talk about our brand, that's about reaching everyone. As we look at other parts of our business, that maybe we're going after a business decision maker, or a younger audience that has more of a geographical skew. Those are times where we use advanced TV specifically as an awareness driver to reach that audience. And so it does, again, going back to, depends on what you're kind of trying to accomplish, the scale that you need and the audience that you're reaching. We use it both ways.
Okay, and it looks like one more question came in. We have a little bit of less than a minute. So let's see. They want to know, how does creative play in your strategy? Are you measuring creative efficiency beyond pre-testing? If so, how does that impact your media strategy as you tackle cross-screen?
Creative is like, we could spend another half hour on this, because as the TV space evolves and we get very, it's more sophisticated, we have to bring the creative partners along. Mm-hmm. We have to, like my counterpart internally that's developing all of our TV content, like she has to be educated as much as I am to some degree on what the opportunity is, because it impacts production costs. It impacts the amount of content required, or the opportunity for additional content, especially as you get into the addressable TV space. Like that is a big conversation that we can't forget as media leaders, that we have to lead kind of the marketing organization to take advantage of the space. It's not just a media buy and we're going to be successful navigating. We're not going to just reach the right audience and be successful. You have to bring along the creative partners in this world in order to really take advantage of it.
Great. Thank you so much, Kari. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Susan. Hey, Kari. That was amazing. Kari, you're clearly so sophisticated already in this space, and I cannot thank you enough for sharing all of those insights with our audience and with Susan. I know it's extremely valuable for them. And we know on our end how much education needs to be done in the marketplace, and we're working to kind of bring everyone along and get them up to speed to where you are. I have to say, with your measurement comments, I feel very seen as the research guy. And we are definitely working on that day and night. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.